If you breathe through your mouth, and you may not feel this, but go ahead and do it. Take a big breath in from your mouth. Okay? That is completely ineffective because you have nitrogen and oxygen mixed together in your lungs, and your lungs cannot split the two. Okay? So whatever oxygen is free in the air is whatever oxygen you're able to access to that with your mouth. Okay? Now breathe through your nose, even if it's difficult. And you see there's a lot of resistance, right? And people say, oh, I can't breathe through my nose because there's a lot of resistance. You want that resistance. That is in fact what the concha is doing, right? So the concha is actually turbinating the air, splitting the air and warming it. And as it warms it and it turbinates it, it splits the nitrogen and oxygen. And because it splits nitrogen and oxygen, you have separate nitrogen and oxygen in your lungs, and now that air is useful, okay? If you haven't read it, you should read Breath. It's a great book. I can't think of the author. You guys can bring up the author's name. I just forgot the author's name. Brilliant book. And in that, he describes a study where they had, I think, runners. I think it was runners. They had one set of runners run long distance. They could breathe through their mouth or whatever they want to do. Another set of runners where they taped the mouth. So they had to breathe through their nose. And the ones that were breathing through their nose were much more resilient in long distance than the ones that are breathing through their mouths. The problem is it is painful. And part of the reason why it's painful is because we have evolved small nasal cavities, and this is what we're getting into for treatment in particular. And you compare the skulls of people just 200 years ago. We're not even talking about evolution here, okay? Evolution is in a span of millions of years, right? Just 200 years ago, people had larger nasal cavities than we have today. So we have nasal problems today that just 200 or 300 years ago people did not have. We also have tooth problems today, by the way, that people 200 or 300 years ago did not have, right? They find skulls of people with all their teeth in place, without tooth decay, right? So, theories about that, are interesting. Don't want to get into that necessarily right now, but the point is, a lot of people have nasal cavity issues today they never had before, and one of them is quite obvious that when they're exercising, they start breathing through their mouth. You start breathing through your mouth, you don't get enough oxygen. You don't get enough oxygen, you cause more spasms. More spasms, more injury, okay? You have to breathe through your nose. If you can't breathe through your nose, you can't think right, you can't function right, you're not getting enough oxygen, okay? So just to give you an idea of why this is so important to work with.